Gulliver's Travels, Chapter 1, A Voyage to Lilliput. My father had an estate in Nottinghamshire. I was the third of 5 sons. He sent me to Emmanuel College in Cambridge, where I resided while studying, with my scanty allowance. I was bound apprentice to Mr. James Bates, an eminent surgeon in London. My father sent me some money, with which I learned navigation and mathematics related to travel, as I always wanted to travel. When I left Mr. Bates, my father and Uncle John gave assistance of £40 and a promise of £30 for maintenance in Leyden. I studied physics knowing it would be useful in long voyages. Soon after my return from Leyden, I was recommended by Mr. Bates to be surgeon to the Swallow, Captain Abraham Pannell, commander, with whom I continued 3 years and a half, making a voyage or 2 into the Levant and some other parts. When I came back, I resolved to settle in London, to which Mr. Bates recommended me to several patients. I took part of a small house in the Old Jewry. I also got married and received £400 for a portion, Mr. Bates dying 2 years after, and I having few friends. My business began to fail, having therefore consulted with my wife and some of my acquaintance. I determined to go again to sea. I was surgeon successively into ships, and made several voyages, for 6 years, to the East and West Indies, by which I got some addition to my fortune. The last of these voyages not proving very fortunate, I grew weary of the sea, and intended to stay at home with my wife and family. I removed from the Old Jewry to Fetter Lane, and from thence to Wapping, hoping to get business among the sailors, but it would not turn to account. After 3 years' expectation that things would mend, I accepted an advantageous offer from Captain William Pritchard, master of the Antelope, who was making a voyage to the South Sea. We set sail from Bristol, May 4, 1699, and our voyage was at first very prosperous. In our passage from thence to the East Indies, we were driven by a violent storm to the northwest of Van Diemen's Land. By an observation, we found ourselves in the latitude of 30 degrees 2 minutes south. Most of the crew was ill and in a weak condition. On the 5th of November, the weather being very hazy, the seamen spied a rock within half a cable's length of the ship, but the wind was so strong that we were driven directly upon it, and immediately split. 6 of the crew, of whom I was one, having let down the boat into the sea, made a shift to get clear of the ship and the rock. We rowed, by my computation, about 3 leagues. We were able to work no longer, being already spent with labor while we were in the ship. We therefore trusted ourselves to the mercy of the waves, and in about half an hour the boat was overset by a sudden flurry from the north. What became of my other companions in the boat, I cannot tell. For my own part, I swam as fortune directed me, and was pushed forward by wind and tide. I often let my legs drop, and could feel no bottom. Though when I was almost gone, and able to struggle no longer, I found myself within my depth. And by this time the storm was much abated. The declivity was so small that I walked near a mile before I got to the shore. I then advanced forward near half a mile, but could not discover any sign of houses or inhabitants. At least I was in so weak a condition that I did not observe them. I was extremely tired, and with that, and the heat of the weather, and about half a pint of brandy that I drank as I left the ship, I found myself much inclined to sleep. I lay down on the grass, where I slept sounder than ever I remembered to have done in my life, and, as I reckoned, about 9 hours, for when I awaked, it was just daylight. I attempted to rise, but was not able to stir, for, as I happened to lie on my back, I found my arms and legs were strongly fastened on each side to the ground, and my hair, which was long and thick, tied down in the same manner. I likewise felt several slender ligatures across my body. From my armpits to my thighs, I heard a confused noise about me, but in the posture I lay, could see nothing except the sky. In a little time, I felt something alive moving on my left leg, which advancing gently forward over my breast, came almost up to my chin. When, bending my eyes downwards as much as I could, I perceived it to be a human creature not 6 inches high, with a bow and arrow in his hands, and a quiver at his back. In the meantime, I felt at least 40 more of the same kind following the first. I was in the utmost astonishment, and roared so loud that they all ran back in a fright, and some of them, as I was afterwards told, were hurt with the falls they got by leaping from my sides upon the ground. However, they soon returned, and one of them, who ventured so far as to get a full sight of my face, lifting up his hands and eyes by way of admiration, cried out in a shrill but distinct voice, "Heckin' a deagle!" The others repeated the same several times. Struggling to get loose, I had the fortune to break the strings, and wrench out the pegs that fastened my left arm to the ground. I discovered the methods they had taken to bind me, and at the same time with a violent pull, which gave me excessive pain, I loosened the strings that tied down my hair on the left side, so that I was just able to turn my head about 2 inches. But the creatures ran off a second time, before could seize them, whereupon there was a great shout in a very shrill accent, and after one of them cry loud it ceased I heard,